feel free to start whenever. I think Josh just hopped on, which means the last session ended.
Yes.
Cool.
All right. Cool. Well, the good news is that I did do a pre-recording, so I know that I last about 25 minutes of this thing. So I am going to get started in case there's any questions, and we'll try to grab those at the end. So this is administration, modernization, building and deploying containers to vSphere integrated containers. That's a mouthful. Primarily what we're focusing on is deploying long-running PowerCLI scripts to vSphere integrated containers. So that's what we're looking at. So I have a few slides. I'm going to try and go through those, and then we'll actually get into like the live coding aspect or live demo aspect. So I am Justin Sider. I'm the Chief PowerShell Officer at Belay Technologies. I have a personal blog. You can find me pretty much on GitHub, social media, Twitter, Slack, wherever it is, with the name JP Sider. On my day-to-day, I manage a large team of coming up on like 15 to 16 people. We do large-scale enterprise testing for software. But generally, while I manage the team, I'm really writing a lot of PowerShell to automate things that go on inside of our multi-site, multi-user system. So, all right, so we're going to talk about why this is important, why you want to learn these things, why these, what these skills are, what my home lab setup is. So when we go through the demo today, you'll understand that, what I'm running on and what lives inside this environment. How to identify a candidate script, building a container, running a container. These are both going to be locally. And then we'll deploy that to vSphere integrated containers, run the container in the VIC, and then we'll talk about environmental variables, and then we'll do a little takeaway. All of the code from this session is available on the GitHub repository for Code Connect. All right, why is this important? So one thing, when I first started this journey, I just thought it was cool, right? Everyone's moving to containers, so I was like, why can't my PowerShell scripts move to containers as well? So I started down the path. PowerShell 6 was still relatively new at this point. Integrated containers was still relatively new, but I got it to work and everything's just gotten better. The other thing that for me I needed to solve as a team lead with 15 people is that, I would write a script and then run that locally on my machine. And while that's great, moving that script to another person's box meant that they had to have all the right PowerShell modules, which wasn't always the case. And to make sure that they were logged into the right session. And then if you get booted off that session, does that script continue or does that script fail? So for me, I needed a different place for my runtime environment for the PowerShell scripts. This also, bullet number 3, kind of makes me feel more like a developer, right? I'm no longer just a system admin. I'm writing scripts. I'm using tools that they're using, maybe not as advanced as they're using, but I kind of feel more like a developer. You're absolutely advancing your skills, and you're also running in a more simplified runtime environment for these long-running scripts. But also, one thing that you learn along the way is to write better code. I can't tell you how important that unit tests start to become and error handling. They're huge. So here's my home lab setup. So starting at the bottom, I have 2 Intel NUCs. These are the older, like version 5 guys, they're the little bit thicker ones. Running on top of that, I have my vCenter. It's just a single cluster. Inside of that cluster, I have my VIC appliance, and then my VCH, or the virtual container host, and that is used by the VIC to deploy the containers. And then inside the containers up the top, we have our application. So if you look over to the right, pretty basic, I have my Intel NUCs. On top of that, we're running PowerShell inside of Photon OS. So one of the beautiful things about VIC, if you're not very familiar with it, is it's really just a VMware interface to deploy containers and applications. And the beauty of it is that each individual container is deployed into the vSphere environment and is a first-class citizen. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio of containers to virtual machines. And that virtual machine is a Photon OS VM with the container that you define running inside of it. So you can give it network specs, anything that you can give a virtual machine. And then running inside of the container, that's where we're running our long-running script. All right, so identifying a candidate script for running in any container, whether it be vSphere integrated containers or just something local on your machine. Start simple. You must have error handling. It's idempotent, which means that you can run many of these at a time, and you can restart them at any time. It can run on a loop or a timer, so it never ends. and it doesn't create excessive logs. So one thing I haven't really solved with this vSphere integrated containers piece is logging. At work, what I might do is send some stuff to the Elastic, Kibana, Elk stack. But generally containers are pretty small in size, so you don't want to store logs locally. So pretty much what we're doing today is we're going to connect to vCenter, we're going to run a report, and then we're going to send that email. And that's pretty much the basis for all of the stuff we're doing today. All right, so I'm going to run through the commands, and then you'll see me actually perform them inside the PowerShell console. So building a container, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a directory. Inside of that directory, we need 3 important things. Really 2, the third one's optional. We need the script that you want to run. And we need to create a Docker file, which is basically a manifest on how to build the container. So the command is pretty simple. Docker build, which is our Docker aspect of the command. A location of the Docker file, so this can be a full path. In this case, we're using doc because I'm already in the directory. -t, which is a tag for the container name that we're going to create. In this case, we're doing CODE4225. So that's going to be the name of our container. So the next thing is to run this container locally. So we're going to do docker run. Again, that's our Docker command. We're doing a -i, which is interactive. You might also want to throw a T in there, which will allow you to kill the process that you're running. And then you want the name or the tag of the container. So docker run -i, CODE4225. Deploying the container to the VIC, it's pretty easy. So you're going to log into the VIC registry. One note here is that once you deploy the VIC, there's a when you get to resources, I'm sorry, I have resources available at the end of the slides that'll have links to all the documentation. The documentation for deploying vSphere integrated containers is very good. Connecting to the VIC from PowerShell is not very well documented. You'll need to download the CA from the VIC appliance and then install that in your Windows machine. So that's one little gotcha that I don't know is really well documented. So we log in with a simple Docker command, just like you would with any registry. Docker login, IP address, that's the IP address of my vSphere integrated containers appliance. Then we will tag the container with the Docker commands Docker tag, base container, which is the name that we gave it earlier, the base tag, which is code connect, and then we're telling it where it's going, which is registry, project, and the desired container name. So you can see what that is for us. And then the last thing is once we tag it, we're going ahead and push it, which will actually copy the files up to the registry and make it available in vSphere integrated containers. All right, this is what the VIC will look like. You're going to see this during the demo today. We're going to have a container that exists. This one is starting my pre-demo in case there's anything that goes wrong today. You hit deploy, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see some emails show up in an email tool that I found online. And today, again, you're going to see some hard-coded usernames and passwords and scripts, which I'm sure people have commented on before. Don't do this in real life, but for demos, it's fine. And environmental variables allow you to specify things outside of the container, and it can accept those into the environmental variables. So I have a second demo where you'll see that I've specified all these environmental variables, and we pick those up on the fly. So the takeaway, we'll cover this again hopefully at the end, you get to use VMware technologies, the same thing you do every day to expand your skills. It's not terribly difficult. You might actually like it in the end. And this is great for running important long-running scripts in large team environments, right? It's a simplified runtime environment that anyone from your team can use. You don't have to worry about this running on John's box or Karen's box or anybody's box. This is running inside your environment. And this is just the beginning. There's plenty more to learn and build upon from this. Here are the resources. All of these resources are going to be listed in the repository. And then maybe at the end, I can put these up before we get out of here. So with that, it's demo time. All right. Here we go. All right, so back to the environment. Here is my base cluster. I have my 2 ESXi hosts. This is the vCenter integrated containers appliance. You can see my vCenter. I do have a VCH also already deployed. And this is some pre-containers that I put out there before this, just in case something goes wrong, because live demos are awesome. This is vSphere integrated containers that I'm logging into. So we'll poke around this for just a minute or two. So by default, you log in and you see applications. These are containers that have been deployed in the past. We have built-in repositories. So this is the template for those containers that we're running. We can see the container host. This is that VM that you saw. This is what actually interacts with vSphere to create the container. So deploys the Photon OS, which the container is running inside of. Administration, what I wanted to show you is this root certificate is something that you wanted to download. So this is what you need to know to be able to log into the vSphere integrated containers through PowerShell. So you need to download this and then install it into your trusted root certificates or authorities. So that was administration configuration. All right, what else do we have? So that should be pretty good there. So mail trap is what I'm using to capture some fake emails. So we're connecting to the vCenter, we're running the report, and then you're going to see the emails actually show up here once we start running. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to build this container. So you can see I am in Justin Resources Docker 01, and you can see the folder layout here. It's probably not the best view. Let's go here. So this is my first file or first directory. I have a Docker file and I have my script. So let's take a look at both of those. We have from Microsoft PowerShell, this is going to be PowerShell 7 container. We are going to run this command during the build process, which means we're going to install VMware.PowerCLI, report card PS, which is doing our reporting, and then this JP Cider module, nicely named, of course. This is actually going to just pull some login stuff to make stuff look great for the demo. And then we're going to copy this send mail script into the container. And then on startup, we're actually running that script, which is going to be located in the temp file or temp directory. All right. So the very basic script here that I didn't click on the right way is pretty simple. We're setting our variables at the top here. So again, don't hard code these things for real life. I'll be changing my mail username and password after the demo. So go ahead and copy those if you'd like. We're going to set the PowerCLI configuration so that we don't get any errors. So invalid certificate action we're going to ignore, and hopefully no PowerCLI developers see me do this. All right, so first thing we're going to do is attempt to connect to the vCenter. And if that is good, we're going to set this variable to true because we basically want this thing to continue on no matter what. The second piece that we're going to do if we do not connect to the vCenter is we are going to basically retry. And we're going to continue to retry every 15 seconds. The next piece is we're actually going to get into the report aspect. So we're creating, so once we've connected the vCenter, we are going to run a endless loop to continue to generate this report every X number of seconds. So the report gets generated here. So we are finding the template from report card PS, which is a module that I wrote that uses Clarity PS to generate an HTML report. We are generating the actual report. We're giving it a title and using the path of the report that we found here. We're creating a subject for the email. And then we are getting some basically housekeeping done with passwords and secure information from above. And then we're using send mail message, which is a deprecated function actually, to send email to the email server. And if something goes wrong, we throw that out into write output, and then we do a countdown and we try again. So you're going to see this actually happens pretty fast. We only wait 5 seconds in between emails. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this container. And it is already built because I haven't deleted anything. So successfully tagged it as Connect01. And now we're going to run this container. And then what you're going to see, if I have this done right, is within a couple seconds, you're going to start to see a bunch of emails start to flow through this. So let me refresh this guy. Go into the inbox. So every 5 seconds, you're going to get a new email. So this, again, is a container running locally on my machine. I have Docker Desktop installed. You can see it running down here. This little whale guy. And this is running locally on my machine. And we're going to stop this guy. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run that tag command. So I want to send him up to vSphere integrated containers. So, as a team environment, even running inside of Docker containers is a great thing. If you have a shared registry, so you can build a container, share it with your team. Make sure you can actually see this. And then you can actually pull those containers down. And share them internally. So now we just push that up to vSphere integrated containers. Saw that there was a question. So this is actually a good question. Sorry, I'm jumping in on answering questions probably before I should. So vSphere integrated containers is, I believe, supported with vSphere Enterprise Plus. So it is not something that you actually purchase outside of your vSphere licensing. Hit me on, or you might want to reach out to us on Slack just to make sure I didn't misspeak there. All right, so back to vSphere integrated containers. We look at built-in repositories. Before we had two, these pre-demo ones. Now we have this guy. So this is the guy that I sent up here. And you can see it was just sent in at 7:44 p.m. I'm not sure what time that is. Apparently I don't have NTP running. Let me go back and I'm going to deploy this guy. So the cool thing is when we look at containers, this is, you can see that he was provisioning here. And you'll actually see all of the output come in through here. So I'm going to change this to 100 lines, and that's a live change. I'm going to get rid of all these emails. And you can see that we've already started getting new emails. So I'm running the same container that I was just running on my box, live in vSphere integrated containers. And he'll continue on and on every 5 seconds. All right. So beautiful thing, you can just hit stop and he stops the progress. This doesn't delete the container. So when we go back out to vCenter, we can actually see that we have the container and now it stops, but now it stays there. It doesn't actually get deleted until you tell it to delete the container. So now we can hit remove and the container will be gone. Bye-bye. All right. So the next piece that I wanted to show you was, let's see, pre-Docker. I want to go back to built-in repositories. And I wanted to actually go to templates. So this one, when we edit this template, has the environmental variables. So we can see the vCenter username and password, the vCenter we're connecting to, and those SMTP username and password. So these are not hard-coded in that script. So when I go back over to VS Code and I look at my Docker02 guy, you can see that I commented these guys out. So I'm now saying, grab the environmental variable named VC user. So when I come over to this guy, you can see that all of these match over here. I'm pointing to my screen, but I know you can't see that, so I'm doing my best to show you guys. All right, so here's all the vCenter information, all the environmental variables I'm passing in, and these are all the guys here in the container manifest. So I can save this, and then I can run this guy or deploy, provision this template. So this is now a template. This is no longer a container. So if I just run the container, for the built-in repository for pre-demo Docker 02, you'll see that we have a bunch of errors. So I'm going to pull up both actually. Go into templates and provision this guy. Go over to applications. Let's see what we have going. So you can see this one's not running. This one should have been running. Actually, that one failed. Sweet. All right, so here we go. So this one should be sending emails. So we should start. You see 0 start over again, 1, 2, 3. That's good. I'm curious to go back and look at this guy. He stopped. Let me go back. All right, so we're still running there. We go built-in repositories, and let's deploy this guy. And it does not deploy it. Interesting. All right, some other day. All right, so VIC and Tanzu. So I'm going to start answering questions. For the most part, where the demo is over, let me put the resources back up so you guys can grab those if you want to see those. Does that every time. Cool. All right, so VIC and Tanzu are not the same. What I would say is VIC is kind of similar to what you would see with like Docker Compose. You can build applications, but it's not really like full Kubernetes inside of vSphere. VIC is using the Photon OS in order to run the container in the vSphere environment. When you start talking about Tanzu, you're talking about native Kubernetes on the ESXi host. So that's really like a couple levels down from where VIC is. VIC is running at the virtual machine layer. Tanzu and Kubernetes, when you talk about Tanzu, is running more at the ESXi hypervisor level. Not to mention, a lot more is built into the Tanzu platform than just vSphere integrated containers. For me, as a system administrator, I think vSphere integrated containers is fantastic because it's very simple to understand. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. So hopefully that answered that question. What else do people have for me? These sessions are being recorded. I will give permission once they email me. You can reach out to me on Twitter and Slack. I just had another question. Let's see. You could use these containers like scheduling processes and orchestrator. So as an alternative, I'm assuming that's what that means. Okay. Yeah, so Dale was basically saying that you can run the same type of thing in Orchestrator. So I agree. So I don't use Orchestrator in my environment. Oh, or is it a question? So someone asked the question, do we have to avoid interaction in the script inside the container? So I believe there is no interaction with the script. Like someone, for this running container, I'm not interacting here. I'm just watching the write output. So the only interaction that you would have with the script would be to stop the container. For how to run Plex, I would assume that Plex, so Plex is going to be a storage issue and potentially a licensing issue on that. super familiar with Plex. If you can find a container that will run Plex, you can certainly run that as a container inside of vSphere integrated containers. You might want to talk about like putting Nginx in front of it. Dale, I'm still kind of confused as to whether you're asking me a question or giving me answers. I'm still spamming my cell phone.
We can unmute people if they want to just chat with you.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Live, were you talking to Dale? Was that who it was?
So Dale, yeah, he's putting some questions. I'm not sure if he's asking a question or telling me something.
Okay, 1 second. Dale, do you want to unmute and chat for a little bit? Maybe not.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I think even if he's able to ask this question, I don't know if he can hear us or hear the answer.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I didn't have my mic plugged in, sorry. No, I was just wondering, the way that you were describing that, sometimes I schedule scripts within Orchestrator to run, to do what you're saying, that generates reports and generates emails and stuff like that, but then you're relying on, Orchestrator and stuff to be running. But I guess if you had a container that would run that script, it's kind of doing the same type of process. Is that what?
Yeah, I think the beauty of this,
It's just a different way to do it.
it's a different way to do it, exactly. So, one nice thing about this is that you can, just as I push this container, the person who sits next to me can pull the container from the registry and run it locally on their box. So it's just a way to create that runtime environment that anybody can run at their leisure. And the nice thing is you don't have to rely on a scheduling mechanism. This is, primarily when I created this demo, I was thinking just long running scripts, not necessarily like a scheduled task. But I think it could be done either way.
Right. Yeah. No, this is the first time I've seen a demo of VIC, so that really caught my interest, and I just started thinking about how to put it into production. That's the first thing I thought of. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing now with Orchestrator, but you could do it with containers. Kind of a way to start getting our feet a little wet with containers.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, and initially when I kind of approached this, so I actually run production PowerShell in our environment, and I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now. So when I first started, PowerShell 6 was just coming out. Running on Linux was very new. PowerCLI had just opened up and started running on 6. So for me, the very beginnings, and even with VIC, it was very slow to start. But it's been a good experience for me to really understand the technology stack and what's going on, especially now as our Java developers are moving from like a monolithic app into the container world.
Right.
So I've kind of got a jump start on those guys.
Yeah. It's just something. For some reason, I attend a lot of sessions and stuff, but I've never seen VMware demo this at all.
So the VIC is a open source project, and it is the redheaded stepchild, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
So I happen to love it, but it does not get a lot of love from other folks.
Everybody wants to do Kubernetes instead.
Yeah, they want to go straight to the very complex things.
Right. No, it was a good demo. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for attending. I think with that, we're wrapping up. So if there's any further questions, feel free to reach out on me on Twitter, Slack, anywhere that you can reach me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, we'll wrap up now. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you all.